I'm going to sound really bitter about this. No work with that school. We had no money in the bank. I didn't feel like I was an English teacher. Screw this. Let's just fly back to Manchester. This is what happened.
This is Teacher Talk.
Oh, that's a nice title, isn't it?
So, okay, before we actually get into it, obviously you go into Peru.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, while you was there, I believe you potentially got homeless.
Very close to being homeless, yeah.
I imagine that was quite a tough time, especially with your partner as well.
Incredibly challenging, considering what we just left in Napoli, the stability and security and having everything there ready without having to do anything. You know, the accommodation was there and being taken to and from work. So it was in a very different environment. And yeah, it felt like we were very close to being homeless.
Right. Well, there's obviously a little bit to get to that point. So let's go back, obviously, from you leaving Italy and what you did next.
Mm-hmm. So after Italy, I went and worked, like immediately, I went working in a summer school. That was in Brighton. I was there for like 7 or 8 weeks, I think. I can't actually remember, but 7 or 8 weeks. Obviously, I was only going to Peru in January, so I needed to do a bit of work during the summer. And then basically from around the end of August, I just took a break. Like I was burnt out. You know, I'd been going non-stop for a long time. So I thought, just take a break, just enjoy this time before going to Peru in January. And this time, start planning.
Well done. Now, obviously, I know you briefly mentioned it in the previous episode. Obviously, you're with a partner at the moment.
Yep.
Going to Peru. Was the planning due to your partner, or was that, was that you actually picking up after learning after a few years of travelling?
Yeah, a bit of both, I think. A bit of both. It's like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. Let's actually put some thought into this. And again, having that responsibility of going with somebody else who had never done anything like that, gone so far away, done something so different. I felt not a little bit. I felt a lot of responsibility to just to plan and do things better, rather than just turn up and see what happens. You know, I spent months speaking with different schools and school owners and stuff out there, looking for accommodation, trying to find, to have everything in place before we went out there. Which, of course, to be honest, you can never actually do. Like I said, you can think you have a job at a school, but then you turn up, they could say, we don't know who you are, or there's no teaching positions. So it's still a massive risk. But I didn't just have one school, there was about 3 or 4 schools that I was in touch with. But in terms of the accommodation, there was only one place that I wanted. I found a room in this big house in a district called Barranco. So we flew to Lima, and there was a district called Barranco, and it's like this sort of really cool, hippie, bohemian district. And there was this terrace. It's a big house owned by a Peruvian family who lived there, and they rented a couple of rooms out. And it had this beautiful terrace with a view of the Pacific Ocean. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's it. That's the one we're having. So I spent months talking to the woman who was in charge of renting the room out. And yeah, we got that. So just knowing that you're going out to a place like that was pretty incredible.
Again, a big difference from going to Italy. Again, thinking you're going to a city.
Yeah. Knowing I was going out to that sort of accommodation was incredible, but there's still a huge risk to it. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, is this a fake website? Is this a scammer? I didn't ask to send any money over beforehand.
Yeah.
But also then you haven't signed any sort of a contract. So it's just, you're literally just taking it on God's good grace that they're going to keep that room open, because somebody else could have gone out there and taken the room. So there was still a huge risk to it. So even planning is great, of course it is, but there's still a huge risk. But we went out there, the room was available, everything was fine in the end, so no risk.
You're settling in Peru, you've got a position, obviously with your girlfriend, things are looking great. So tell us a little bit about it, about you actually settling, about you obviously the teaching aspects of things, and how things were going at that time when you first started over there.
Yeah, everything happened pretty quickly because I'd been in touch with schools, so I got interviews set up straight away with about three different schools, I think. So, and again, because of the planning, I knew when the school year was starting. It's obviously much, much different in Peru. It starts in sort of end of January, beginning of February, because Southern Hemisphere, that's the summer.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to go out there and have weeks and weeks and weeks of doing nothing. So we literally landed, did some interviews and started teaching immediately. 2 schools, one of them, let's call it a proper school, it had several buildings. It was like a franchise, several buildings throughout the city. And the other one was a guy just sort of starting out for himself. Mm-hmm. Basically just finding people who want to study English, find a teacher to teach the people who want to study English. And that was what he was doing. So he didn't have an office or a building. And it felt quite similar to Napoli. Sometimes I would go and teach in people's homes. I remember actually one lesson, I was teaching a woman for a few weeks. We would meet in a Starbucks, just sort of in the middle of Lima, and do the lesson there. And I remember at that specific time, money wasn't in abundance. We had, money was dwindling by this point. I remember just sitting in Starbucks for 2 hours, not even ordering a coffee because I didn't want to spend any money. So yeah, there was that. And then working in a school, like I said, a proper school, mainly with teenagers. So again, working a lot with teenagers and adults. And yeah, it was, again, very different to Napoli, where I had 22, 24 hours set up every week from October to June. This time it was cherry picking and finding hours from this place, and this, you've got 10 hours with this group and you've got 30 hours with this group. It was much, it was a lot different and much more challenging, but I'd been dreaming of Peru for like 3 years. So again, I was just happy to be there. Like, it's like I said I was going to go to Peru and I'm here. Mm-hmm. So I would take whatever work was coming my way.
Obviously, like you say, you was happy with whatever and any work coming your way. Again, different setup than Italy, but nothing that you hadn't done in Vietnam or anything, obviously working for different people. Yeah. How was, again, going to your partner, how were they finding it, doing it like that?
Much more challenging. She relied heavily on, which again, it's fair enough, most people do, they want security and stability and knowing that they're going to have this many hours for this amount of time, whereas I don't need that security and stability. So that was a challenge, but with her being Italian, she could also teach Italian. So I know she did have some lessons teaching English and some lessons teaching Italian. She had something and she was teaching for the first time. So that was a new experience for her. And because we were just renting a room, it wasn't overly expensive. So between the two of us, we could more than afford it. For me, it wasn't about, okay, let's go to Peru and work 30 hours each a week. What's the point of going 6,500 miles away? Yeah. So it was like, let's do some work, let's pay for it, and let's just enjoy being in Lima. Let's enjoy being in South America. That was my approach, anyway.
Of course
it went like that for a while.
Things are looking up.
Yeah.
Going great. But it didn't stay like that for long, did it?
No.
Tell us a little bit what happened there.
Yeah. So I'm going to sound really bitter about this, considering it happened 9-10 years ago. But this is what happened. We'd bought the tickets, which are not cheap, from Manchester to Lima via the US. And just before that, my brother had proposed to his girlfriend. Amazing. Congratulations should have been my reaction. But my reaction was, but I'm going to Peru. That was my reaction, It's so selfish.
People don't get married straight away.
But that's what he said. He said, oh, don't worry, we've only just proposed. It's going to be a year or 2 years down the line. I was thinking, brilliant, because I can't just fly back. I'm not in Italy anymore. This is Peru, South America. It's a long way away. No, don't worry, it won't be for a year, 2 years. All right, okay, well, congratulations. We got to Peru. We'd been in Peru for probably a couple of weeks. And I spoke to my brother, and he said, oh, we're getting married in April.
And when was this?
So this is January, just before we went. Yeah.
The same year they got married?
The same year. Okay. Literally, they'd found a slot, a church, had got an opening, and they'd, again, for them, absolutely, if they're going to get married. But still, I said to my brother, but I'm going to Peru. But I've booked it. I've already booked my tickets. Don't worry, we'll help with tickets and that stuff. So here we go again, flying to another country, and I'm having to fly back to Manchester. Yeah.
So how long was you actually in Peru for and teaching before you actually fly back?
I would have started, let's say, the beginning of February. So February, March, I think it was beginning of April. So 2 months, we built up a really nice schedule. I was teaching between about 25 hours a week. My girlfriend was working 10, 15 hours. We were doing really well, right? But the flight, we had to then book a return flight for a week to Manchester for the wedding, which again, the money that we had saved up was going to help us just in case we needed to dip in and use some of that money. That's what that was there for. Now it's all gone because we've just booked flights back. So now there's nothing to fall back on. And I remember just before we left, so I booked the flights 1 week. I spoke to the schools that I was working for, with the other guy who, was just getting students randomly. I was teaching in Starbucks, that kind of stuff. He had no problem with it. Yeah, a week's fine. But for the other school, the proper school, they said, well, listen, sorry, kid, but if it was just a few days, we'd find a substitute teacher. But because you're going for a week, we can't just find a substitute for a week. So the way that school operated, they would give monthly slots of work.
Okay.
And it was just, you were constantly, every month, you would then be given another 20, 25, 30 hour schedule or whatever. And they did this every month. I don't know why, but that's the way they operated. So because I was leaving for a week, they had to give a month's work to another teacher. So I lost a month's work. So we were flying back for a wedding for a week, flying back to Peru knowing that I would have no work with that school for a month. And we had no safety net. We had no money in the bank to fall back on. And we flew back knowing that.
Very hard times then.
Yeah, 2 months. The first 2 months were incredible. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, well, Peru now is completely turned on its head and it's no longer the fun experience it was supposed to be. And it just turned into a struggle, like a huge, huge struggle. And I was best man at my brother's wedding. It was incredible to stand next to him and watch him get married. But if I'm being perfectly honest, there was also this thing of like, this has massively screwed my dream up and financially and all of that stuff. So I still sound bitter about it because it's still a bit of a traumatic experience.
Although it changed your whole experience, I suppose, in Peru. Like you say, you were just finding your feet, just settled in, getting with your classes, understanding your students, understanding the schools that you're working for, the culture, the area. And then, like you say, that all being basically not taken away, but having a massive dent in that financially, and with your own career, obviously, a step back, obviously having a month out.
And it would have been easy, just to think, you know what, screw this, let's just fly back to Manchester and find another job. Let's not bother. But that stubbornness that I've constantly mentioned, it was like, no, this was my dream, and I'm not just going to give this up because it's going to be a struggle. We will find a way, and I'm still going to go back to Peru, and we will manage, and we will be okay,
So, obviously, you've gone back to Peru.
Yeah.
I want a little bit more about the struggles. Was you sharing a tin of beans over a candle? Or, how bad are we talking?
We were doing things like the drinking water there, even the family, they wouldn't drink water from the taps. So they would boil the water. And we were doing that. There was this big pan, and we would fill it up, boil it for a couple of hours, and that was our drinking water for the week. Because we didn't want to go and buy bottled water from the supermarket. That's how bad it was.
So hard times then.
Yeah.
Very hard times.
So all of those things that we went out there to do, let's enjoy Lima, we couldn't afford to go out to restaurant. We couldn't afford bottled water. We were really trying to cut costs on things. So we weren't even going out to restaurants or going out for a drink or anything. Like we weren't able to enjoy that time.
Sat at home drinking boiled water and super noodles.
Basically, yeah.
No,
So
yeah.
it was a struggle. It's such a shame because, as I said, the one thing that I think helped us through that was that terrace. We could sit on a terrace and just look out onto the Pacific Ocean and at least be like, you know what, look at where we are, kind of a thing. Yeah, it's a struggle. Yeah, it's really hard, but just look at that. Look at where we are.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped. So knowing that, we did have this difficult conversation of, all right, well, things are going to pick up in the end of May, and do we continue? Or what do we do? Because we had to make that decision actually before we flew back, because we booked a return flight. We agreed, let's go back until the start of the British summer, and let's go back and work for summer schools, because at least we know there's that stability there. So we agreed to do that, to go back until, I think we left at the end of June. So going back in April, we had April, May, June, so 3 months. Let's just make the most of the time we have in Peru. It's great experience for my then girlfriend. She was teaching for the first time. It was great experience for her. I was still earning valuable experience teaching. And even just those like life lessons, those struggles, it changes you. And, looking back, I'm still glad I would do it again. If somebody said, go back and you'd have to do things the same way, I'd do it. Yeah. I wouldn't change a thing.
Like you say, there was light at the end of the tunnel. Obviously, you was going to start getting paid, obviously, back end of May. Mm-hmm. And the dream was back alive, so to speak.
Yeah.
How did you actually find the teaching over in Peru? What challenges did you have? What enjoyment did you have from that?
It's such a big difference from Vietnam. I think this was the first time that I really felt like a teacher. I'd what I'd done in Napoli, and then with the summer school, and now in Peru, I really felt like I started to find my way, my method of teaching, and things, even the little things like grammar and stuff. I really, really started to feel like a teacher there. So this would have been my 5th year into teaching, and this is when I really felt like it. Like, okay, yeah, now I'm a teacher. I know what I'm doing now. So that was, even that realization, even with all the struggles and things going on, to have that. Being involved in teachers' meetings and that kind of stuff, and feeling more confident in speaking out and having ideas and suggestions, in like teachers' meetings and stuff. That's the first time I really felt like that.
Yeah.
Because of everything that I'd learned previously, so it was worth it.
No, that's good. And was there, any major differences at all? Teaching, as a culture, or anything that was totally different than what we'd see in the UK or in Vietnam or anything?
Honestly, no. I mean, not in terms of, let's say, the mentality or the, behavior or whatever within the kids. Teenagers are teenagers. Wherever you go, adults are adults. They've got worries, worrying about the jobs and the families and that kind of stuff. There was an unusual setup with one of the schools with the way they did exams. Or the way they did testing. So adults were booking, I can't remember, 20 hours or whatever, 30-hour slots. And they would have to do a test, there would be an oral test, and there would be a written test. What I didn't realize is that test score, they had to pass that test in order to move on to the next 20 or 30-hour slots. Whereas I didn't know that. I would think, well, no, they should be evaluated based on 80, 90, 100 hours of lessons or whatever. Nobody told me. Again, it's that thing, people just not telling you how things work, expecting you to know, well, here's a test and this is how we do things. Well, explain what the test is about, the result it's supposed to get, why that result matters, what happens after. Mm-hmm. People just don't seem to think that it's a good idea to give information to teachers. I've experienced that so much, actually. And I remember doing these tests, and there was one woman, I can't remember her name, but I can still remember her face because I remember the disappointment. She did a test, and basically she hadn't got the score that she needed to pass on to the next 20 hours. She would have to repeat those 20 hours, which is expensive. But I didn't know that. I would have just given a few extra marks so she could have gone on to the next 20 hours. So having a chat with all the students individually, here's your test result, here's what to expect in the next 20 hours. And obviously because she'd failed, that's when I realized for the first time that she wasn't going to move on to the next 20 hours. She would have to repeat. And just that look on her face. And I can't even imagine all the things that were going on. She was probably thinking about, well, I've got to pay for another 20 hours. I don't know, she had kids that she had to pay for. She's got other things to worry about. If I'd known that, rightly or wrongly, I would have given her a few extra points. So she could have gone on to the next level. So yeah, those things, that was a big shock. Just having those disappointments on people's face.
Yeah. I have got to say, though, on that, if you had given her those extra points and she had moved on, not saying she would, but she may have struggled so much, she may have given up on English altogether. Potentially.
I think one of the things what she was struggling with, because of her life was so hectic, she's working this crazy job, she's working all around the clock for a job to provide for her family. And I think the English lessons were 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. in the evening. So she was still finding time for that. And I think because of her, it wasn't that her English wasn't good enough. She just hadn't studied for a test. I felt like she was more than good enough. So that's why I said, if I'd known how it worked, I would have just given her a few extra points, because this sort of traditional way of testing people, here's 20 questions about some grammar. It's not that shouldn't determine somebody's future, Just because somebody didn't have time to study those questions about present perfect or whatever grammatical structure it is, that doesn't mean they can't speak English. And I have a real distaste and hatred for these standardized tests. They don't tell the full story. And again, that was a big lesson for me to learn that. And I've used that as a catalyst in my career, finding out exactly how things work, making sure I'm getting all the information I need, and just having a chat with students around testing, when they're having tests, and just sometimes being a little bit lenient with people and being a bit more understanding, rather than allowing this nonsense of a test determine their future.
Again, like you say, if you've been going on teaching them throughout, you know roughly their level, and if they are so close, then I can understand obviously just changing one or two, especially if they are so close and you had, again, potentially being a little bit picky. So no, I totally get that. So obviously I can understand obviously that affecting you.
Yeah.
But what was the big highs with teaching? What did you really learn from Peru?
It reinforced the idea that this is what I want to do now. As I said, I probably for the first time I was like, no, I'm a teacher now. That's how I felt. I would start telling people, what do you do for a living? No, I'm an English teacher. Whereas before I was a little bit more coy with it. I didn't feel like I was an English teacher, but now I really did. And just the confidence that gives you when you're walking into a classroom, that sort of self-belief, nope, I am here, I deserve to be here.
Again, I think it'd be a lot more responsive from the students as well. Someone who is a lot more confident in what they're doing than being a bit more sheepish and shy than what they're doing. They'll definitely be able to tell as you're walking in, so definitely a benefit.
Absolutely. And so I got that from being there, and whatever the struggles, I still left with something like, that sense of confidence. Like, I know what I'm doing now. I do belong here.
So Peru, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. Again, there's a bit
of a theme here. The last sort of 5 years, it's been a bit up and down, hasn't it?
I think it's your life. It's just your life, unfortunately. A lot of ups and downs. Yeah. But no, your time in Peru, again, some highs, quite some lows. Again, a great time. Obviously, again, your brother's wedding, but not without its problems. But there was something that you went and did before you left Peru. That you was really excited for and something that you really wanted to do. And that was one of the reasons you chose the location.
Yeah.
So what was that?
So as we decided, okay, we are going to leave at the end of June. We're going to go back and work on summer schools back in the UK, have that stability back in our lives. But I said, we're in Peru. We might never come back. It's not like Lima's, it's not that, it's far from Lima, but it's like we have to go and see Machu Picchu. We're here. It's basically let's spend whatever money we have and just go and have that one final adventure and incredible experience. And that's what we did, literally. It was the last thing that we did. So we agreed with the schools, this is when we're going to finish. We booked everything. We had to fly from Lima to Cusco. We spent about a week or something there in Machu Picchu. It's the most incredible thing I've seen in all of my years of traveling. It's the only place where everywhere you go, you always have expectations. Whether it's holiday traveling, you always have expectations. And quite often you have such high expectations, the place can never actually live up to it. And I've always tried not to have high expectations, but it's Machu Picchu. Of course, I had unbelievably high expectations, and it's the one place that exceeded those expectations. It was just unbelievable. And I just love traveling and moving, and we had a really good time. Me and my then girlfriend, again, just the adventure of it all, trying to get buses to this place and get accommodation for this place, and then just spending the day in Machu Picchu. It was kind of like, like as you said, the highs and lows and struggles. It was just a really nice way to end things, rather than just leave with that bitterness of, that sucked, it didn't work out. Yeah, but we saw Machu Picchu, so we left very happy.
I can imagine there's definitely a little bit of jealousy. It's definitely somewhere I would love to go and see. But again, it's like you say, it's a great way to end it. The adventure over in Peru, nice big high.
Yeah,
definitely. And one of those wonders ticked off.
Just a huge box ticked off, and that it's still combining the two things. When I went to Vietnam, I wanted to travel, right? Mm-hmm. So still, this job is so wonderful. Yeah, I was working and teaching in Peru, and it was a struggle, but you get to do things like that, and I still love that about this job, this profession. I've worked all over the world, and you just get to see I get to work in this incredible industry, and I go and get to see and do these incredible things. So that it definitely balances the scales for all of the struggles.
Definitely rewarding.
Yeah.
No, it is great. So as you said, your time in Peru has come to an end. Mm-hmm. So what's next for you?
As I said in one of the previous episodes, I'd wanted a school, and we decided after the summer, that's what we were going to do. We were going to go back to Italy, and we were going to set up an English language school.
Wow, that was a big step, especially after only 5 years teaching.
Yeah.
Opening up a school, and did you say your girlfriend had only just started teaching?
Yeah, but we'd learned so much, we were ready.
On the next episode of Teacher Talk, it's a fresh start, back to Italy, building their own school from the ground up. Bigger risks, bigger goals, and everything on the line.